Hey, everybody, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. My name is Sam Hind, and in this episode, I want to talk to you about the 5 biggest lessons that I've learned this year. Now, these are a little bit of a mishmash between some things I've learned in business, some things I've learned about the people that I get to work with and coach in social media, and some of the things that I've learned about me personally. So I'm going to kind of cover off on a bunch of different things. The reason I want to talk about this is because this year has been a crazy year. I know I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. But going into 2021, I want to also start thinking about, what are some of the things that we can do to say, pat ourselves on the back? What are some of the things that we can do differently? And how can we stop ourselves from falling into the same trap? Because here's a little realization I've had. A lot of people have been talking about how they can't wait for 2020 to be over. But I don't think any little magical elves are going to come down when the clock ticks over midnight on 2020 to totally change the way that our world is. We're still going to be living in the same world. We're still going to be facing a lot of the same problems. So what's the one thing that is going to change ticking over into 2021? Well, that's up to us. That comes down to who we are, what we do, and the choices that we make. So I want to launch 2021 into an amazing year filled with joy, filled with success, filled with growth. I can't wait for what it's going to bring. But the only thing that's going to change what it's going to bring is me. So I'm ready to share a little bit with you about what I've learned this year and what I'd like to change about going into this next year as we have our amazing changeover of the years. So let's get on into it. Okay, so number one, I want to talk to you about one of the biggest observations I've made in 2020 when it comes to our business and social media. And here's the key. Social media success doesn't come back to what you know. It doesn't come back to the tech. It doesn't come back to your ability. Social media success 100% of the time, and there are no exceptions here, comes back to how we use social media to build relationships in this business. Now, direct selling, unlike any other business, is very much about relationship building. It's about the people we connect with, how we connect with them, and it's about that ongoing, what we like to call in this industry, belly-to-belly formula, which is really about how do we build a relationship with another human being and how do we translate that into our business. Here's the thing that I've learned in 2021. In 2020, going into 2021. Here's the thing that I've learned, and that is this, that a lot of people come to us initially because they want the tech experience. They want to learn the how-tos when it comes to social media. They want to understand what they need to do. And the thing that we find time and time again is that when we can change people's thinking to be from about the technical side of things to focusing on the relationship, suddenly social media goes gangbusters because it is exactly that. It is social media. So here are 3 things that I know make a really big difference when it comes to successful social media. The first comes back to identifying your ideal customer, or what we like to call your tribe, and connecting with them. How well you do that determines how successful your social media truly is. Yeah, the technical stuff does come into play and it can certainly help you on the journey. But I have seen so many people that have got no technical experience, have no idea how to use the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, all of the apps behind the scenes, yet they are so much more successful than many of those people that do, because what they have nailed is they know exactly who they're talking to and they know just how to connect with them on a real personal level. So that has been my greatest learning of 2020 when it comes to social media. And the funny thing about that is we've always known that. We've always known that relationship building on social media is the key, but we tend to get so caught up in the technical side of things. And even I do from time to time, get a little bit excited by the techie stuff. But the thing is, it really all comes back to that relationship. The other thing is being social on social media, which I've already kind of mentioned, but remembering to be social, not make it about the post and how perfect the post is and the time that the post comes up and the insights and all of the behind the scenes. All of that stuff definitely helps. But when we come back to being social and connecting with our ideal customer, that makes all the difference. And lastly, being consistent in those two things. Being consistent in your connection with your ideal customer, being consistent with your messaging and your language that you're using so that you are building that real relationship, that real connection, and being consistent in being social. When you get those things right, your social media will simply perform all on its own. The rest is tweaking. The tech, the understanding of how to use the tech, they're tweaks. That's not the core, most important thing that you need to learn. Really, what you need to learn to be successful is just how to connect with your ideal customer. So my number one biggest learning for 2020, it isn't really a new learning, but I wanted to reiterate that because it became even clearer this year as we went through this season. Okay, number two is a bit of an interesting one because I think this will resonate with a lot of you out there. But being a mum, being a wife, and being a business person, this has been a really, really challenging year. It's been challenging because we've lived our worlds via Zoom and virtual business. All of our businesses had to go virtual, and that put a lot of pressure on us. But here's the thing that I learned this year, and that is I can't be great for you if I'm not taking care of myself first. Ooh, that's a challenging one, isn't it? This is one of those ones that is a constant learning journey for me. I know for many of you guys, very much the same. It's very easy for us to take care of everybody else and put ourselves on the back burner. But guess what happens when we do that? We end up having an empty cup, and it's very hard to pour from an empty cup. Now, coming in towards the end of this year, I had a little bit of a realization that my cup was not only empty, but it had been very dry for a long period of time. And I was starting to get a bit resentful that I didn't have anything to pour out. I wanted more and it just wasn't there. And the only way for me to get to a point where I could have some more in that cup to pour back out was to stop and take care of myself. And that comes from me. It doesn't come from anyone else. We often look for the people around us to fill our cups, but guess what? We don't get what we really need when we do that. We might get a temporary fix, but it certainly isn't anyone else's responsibility to fill my cup but my own. So here are a couple of things that I have learned help with that process. The first one is quiet time might be really hard to come by. It might be something that we don't often prioritize, but it is vital. It's only when we have that quiet time that we get a chance to stop and assess and think about the things that we're grateful for, that really matter, that we can even consider the things in life that bring us joy. One of the things that I know I really got challenged by this year was I was finding a little bit hard to do anything that brought me joy outside of work. Because I enjoy my work, I ended up seeking all of my joy within it, which meant that I was no longer being present for my family. I was no longer spending quality time with myself, and I was certainly not spending quality time with my husband, Greg, because I was not looking for my joy outside of business. I wasn't finding some things of interest that I could do outside of work. I don't know if any of you guys are a little bit the same as me, but when you sort of find one or two things that you can do at work that you love doing, and when you get rewarded by the success of that, suddenly all your focus can go there, because what do? We measure ourselves by it. We measure our self-worth by our success, and that's not healthy either. So I had to really stop and have some quiet time and think about what are some of the things that soothe my soul and bring me joy. And, some of those things are as simple as getting out into the garden, going for a little walk, going for a run even. I started running again late this year after many years of putting that on the back burner. And it's amazing what a difference it makes when we just do a couple of small things for ourselves in amongst our busy lives. Another one is the time to switch off. And what I mean by that is taking the time to switch off from technology is a really big deal. So, for example, you would have heard me talking about this in other podcasts. I like to keep my mobile phone out of my bedroom. I try to set myself a rule where after 9 o'clock at night, and I'd love to get to a point where I bring that even earlier in the evening, I don't look at my phone again. So social media becomes something that is kept within certain periods of time throughout my day, and it doesn't take over my life. So they're just a couple of minor things for me that I do that might look really different for you. But giving myself time to switch off from technology is a huge thing when we're in such a virtual business and a virtual world right now. Last but definitely not least on this point is gratitude and appreciation for the little things. I've learned that there is a lot to say for sitting down and thinking about where we are grateful for the basics. Just things like the fact that maybe I'm grateful for the rain today, or I'm grateful for the sun. I'm grateful for the flowers. I'm grateful for somebody who had a very small part to play in my life that's made a really big difference. We've had people come and go from our worlds. This is a sort of thing that happens all the time. We have people just, float in and they float back out again. And we think, what was the purpose? Where have they gone? And people can play a really big part in our lives by doing very small little things. And it's very easy to forget about those small little things, yet those things can be really pivotal in our journey in life. And so stopping and having some gratitude and remembering those people, even if they're not part of our life anymore, I think is really, really valuable. And it really does take us back to what really matters. And when you're being grateful, it's very hard to be miserable. That's another another point I just want to put out there. Gratitude, I think, has got a huge part to play in our mindset and how valuable we can be for everybody else. So that was number 2. Biggest lesson I've learned in 2020 is that I can't be great for you if I'm not taking care of myself first. So hopefully that one sort of just reached out to a couple of you out there and reminded you that it's actually okay to take care of you. And I'd really love to encourage you. Don't feel guilty around it. There have certainly been some times, particularly this year, where I felt some guilt around spending time on me. And that doesn't come from anybody else, and it's not healthy. So just remember, it is your responsibility to take care of you. Don't feel guilty about it. It's your responsibility. Okay, so number 3, this is a bit of an interesting one. And as I was pondering this particular podcast topic, I got to thinking about, we've been focused this year on some really negative stuff. There's been a lot of really icky stuff going on in our worlds. And I don't know about you, but I've been getting a bit sick of those people that are the complainers, the misery guts, the ones that, every time you hear them talking, they've got some other piece of bad news to talk about. So here's my big realization for this year. When we focus on the problem, we get more problems. Now, this one, Greg and I made a really big decision around about, I'm going to say, end of March, April this year. So right at that point where COVID became, it sort of it exploded. It was the point where we went into shutdown. The news, like you could not turn the TV on without just being bombarded. And there was this real pivotal point where our daughter Zara came home from school one day and she sat down at the table and she gave us the report for the day. There's been this many cases, there's been this stuff going on, and she sort of rattled out a bunch of things that have been happening. And then she said something to us that really gripped our hearts. She said, we're going to kill our grandparents. And I sort of said to her, what are you talking about? And she said, well, the thing is that school has been playing the news in the background during class. So school had literally had the news going on in the background of their learning all day. This was just before we went into lockdown where the kids were kept at home. So just before homeschooling happened. And school was kind of trying to keep everyone up to date with what was going on. And I think the teachers too wanted to be kept up to date with what was happening. There was a lot of talk about schools possibly shutting down. And so as part of that, they started playing the news in the background in the classrooms. And what had happened was Zara had overheard that the elderly were the most at risk and the things that we should be doing in order to protect them. And what she'd heard from that was that if we didn't stay within our homes and if we didn't self-isolate, regardless of what the rest of the world was doing, we were putting our own elderly and our own family at risk, which she felt made us irresponsible, and we were going to kill them because if we did something, we were going to contract coronavirus, we were going to give it to them, and her whole world was becoming a very stressful place, and she was very focused on the problems of the world. Now, all of the kids we discovered had become victim to this. And so what we decided to do was get proactive with where we put everyone's heads at in our home. And so what we did was we shut the news off. We actually banned the news from our household. So no radio, no TV news, and no newspapers. And we wanted to keep our family in a bubble of gratitude, in a bubble of let's focus on the things we can do, the things we can change, what we are happy about, and bring some joy back into our home, because that joy was being sapped by the problems. So this kind of goes towards a lot of things, but we noticed a really big shift very quickly when our focus was no longer on the problem, but rather the focus was on what can we control? Where are we at? What are we grateful for? So we changed our dinner time talk to be a gratitude talk. And so everyone would talk about something they were grateful for that day or something that brought them some joy that day. And suddenly we saw a really big shift in all of our kids and in ourselves. So here's what I really want to encourage you with. And this comes right back down to your journey with your business, with your social media, in so many different places and spaces. When we focus on the problem, and you know the misery guts is out there, the people that are constantly whinging about something, the next thing, and then the next thing, it drags us down. It takes a lot of energy to focus on the things that are the problems. And guess what happens? We attract more problems to focus on and think about. So I'd like to really encourage you, maybe even challenge you to think about, where do you spend a lot of your thought process? I pull myself up on this every single day. I'll find myself getting cross and angry at something or frustrated at something that's going on in my world. And I think, hang on a minute, what can I be grateful for right now in this problem? What is something that this problem has brought into my life? So maybe, what's a positive we can derive from it? And there is always a positive. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter how bad it may seem. Somewhere within that problem, there is something it's brought into our world, or there's something that it's doing or has done or will do that is going to bring something into our lives we can also be grateful for. So really challenge you as well to do what I've had to really catch myself doing this year. Stop thinking about the problem so much. It doesn't mean that we ignore the problem. We've still got to deal with problems in life, but stop focusing on it with all of our energy and spending some time focusing as well on what we can be thankful for. And I can promise you it makes a really big difference, and we start to attract more of those things that we can be thankful for and less of the problems. So that's a really huge realization for me. It goes for business, maybe your social media as well. If you're focused on the problem with your social media, the fact that no one's engaging with your posts, it comes back down to the fact that you're focusing on this and you're almost attracting more of that same problem to you. So let's have a look at some of your social media wins. Let's have a look at some of your business wins. Where can we focus on those things that are going well, that you're doing well? Maybe you're not seeing the fruit of it yet, but you've got some skills. So let's focus on your skills, the positive things that you bring to your business. And I can promise you'll see a little bit of a shift and a change. And then as those shifts and those changes happen, give them your focus and you will almost multiply them. So interesting concept for those of you that are already on this journey alongside of me. You know exactly what I'm talking about because you've already been practicing this. You've seen what happens. A really amazing movie to watch, guys. If you've never watched this or read the book, is The Secret. I highly recommend. Put that on your list for your holiday break, is to listen to or watch or read The Secret, because man, oh man, it will open your eyes to the power of positive thinking. So just put that one out there. Manifestation, all of those awesome things. It will open your eyes to some pretty cool stuff. So that was number 3. All right. Number 4 is my biggest obstacle that's got in my way always, but in particular this year, has been me. It's a really interesting one to think about. And I'm going to just do a bit of self-reflection here to help you with this particular point, because it comes back to things like, how we do with social media, how we do with our business. So here are a few things that I've noticed about my behavior when it comes to me getting in my own way. Now, if Greg listens to this podcast, he's going to have a little bit of a giggle, I have no doubt. But I'm just going to put this out here right now that there is some behaviors I've noticed in when I really stop and reflect on it, and they're patterns that I notice that I do when it comes to my growth. Now, I don't know about you, but usually I go through this little struggle. There's little, and sometimes I don't get through the struggle. I stay with what I know and what's comfortable. But here's what I notice happens. First of all, when it comes to growth, usually that really pushes us out of our comfort zone. And change can be scary. Change is certainly something that isn't something that our minds and our bodies want to naturally get involved in. We want to kind of stay with what we know and where we're comfortable. And it's goes with exercise as well. Change is scary. Change is painful. Growth is painful. When we start going back to the gym, what happens? You grow your muscles, you build your muscles, but that comes with a little bit of pain and discomfort. The first time you run a 1K run, you're going to be puffing and panting and heaving. You're going to be feeling uncomfortable. It's going to be awful. And it's going to take 2 or 3 of those before it starts to get a little bit easier. But in order to make the 2K easier, we have to start with the 1K. And the challenge is getting ourselves to the point where we push ourselves to give that 1K a go. So I know change can be really scary. It's no different for me than it is for you. But here's something I've also noticed about myself. When someone brings up a new concept or a new idea or we might be in a team meeting and we might discuss a brand new opportunity or a new idea we can go ahead with, or maybe I've got to do things in a different way to what I've normally done them in order to grow something or do something better, I automatically find myself going into a state of making excuses about how the new idea won't work. Before I've even thought about it, I catch myself thinking about why it won't work rather than how it could work. I think about how it won't because I realize I'm going to have to go through a bit of discomfort and change. So, for example, we might talk about using a brand new webinar platform because we know that the one that we're currently using perhaps is not going to sustain the growth that we're hoping for and expecting and planning for in the next year. Straight away, my brain goes, I know what I know. I'm comfortable with what I'm using. And these are all the reasons why that won't work and we shouldn't do it and we can't do it and blah, 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 blah. And I stop and I catch myself and go, hang on a minute. Is this me talking because I'm afraid of the change and the discomfort, or is it me talking because I've actually got a point here to make? Sometimes I find I need to stop and process something for a little period of time, and suddenly I can see the value and I'm ready to push myself into it. It's kind of like if I told you right now, and you've never run before, you're going to get out and I'm going to take you to do a 1K run this afternoon. You would shout to me all the reasons why absolutely no way in hell are you going to do that. But let's just say I gave you a week to think about it. And I told you, you know what? In a week's time, I'm going to take you for a 1K run, but I want you to really think about it. If you get to that time before we do the run, maybe an hour before, and you've got some really good legitimate reasons why you shouldn't do it, then we won't go. But I want you to think about it between now and then, process it, and then we're going to go together. Now, you might between now and then be able to process this, think about the challenge, think about what it's going to do to you, and take yourself to a point where you're ready and you're equipped to go ahead and give that challenge a crack. Or you're going to realize it really is a really bad idea, but you've thought through it for all the right reasons. So something that I've noticed is that absolutely my biggest obstacle is me. I do absolutely get in my own way, but sometimes I've got to stop myself talking, process things, and just think about both sides of the equation. Another thing in this is that it's super challenging for me to take time to learn something new. Now, I want to point this one out because I've got loads of you guys that are in our online courses, and I hear these excuses coming from you guys every single day. So what I do want you to know is that you're not alone, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Part of the importance of learning for us is pivotal, because if we're not constantly learning in our business, then we're not able to stay ahead of the curve on what's going on in order to teach you guys. But learning isn't always something that is super easy to do, because that in itself is challenging. So I actually find it really challenging to find time to learn something new. So I usually find that I make excuses or put it off. But when I make time to learn something new, I am always so grateful that I did. So sometimes it's about stopping and recognizing our own behaviors, paying attention to what we're doing, how we're internalizing things, how our thought processes are working. I don't know about you, but I've got a couple of little voices that go on in my head, and sometimes stopping to listen to those voices is quite fascinating. I've just made myself sound really crazy, I know. But I just want to encourage you that all of us are challenged by learning something new. All of us are challenged by growth. All of us, in any which way, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional. But I doubt very much that there will ever be a time when you do push yourself out of that comfort zone that you will ever regret doing it, that you won't be super grateful that you actually took the time to grow, to learn something new and challenge yourself. So I just want to encourage you in 2021, please don't be your biggest obstacle. I am going to make the commitment to not be my biggest obstacle going into 2021. I'm going to stop. I'm going to listen to my thought processes. I'm going to take the time to stop, think about those challenges, weigh them all up, and not make the excuses anymore. It's going to be a learning journey, but let's go on it together. And if you are in any of our online courses, maybe take the time to get out of your own way, take the time to get in and do some learning. Maybe even schedule it in so that you absolutely push yourself to do that. I promise you won't regret it. You will be so grateful that you did. Last point is this. Biggest learning for 2020. And again, nothing new, but wowee, do I think we need to be reminded of this sometimes. If you don't succeed to plan, you plan to fail. And this has been a huge learning for me this year. I absolutely am one of those people that when I come up with an idea, Greg likes to call me Taz Devil. I go a million miles an hour, constantly on the move. And I love to just, as soon as we start talking about a new idea, start planning how we're going to do it. Not even planning, just rolling it out. Roll with the punches. Here's the thing. And this has been a really contentious issue for us for a long time because Greg is a huge planner and I'm a huge doer. And we've had to meet in the middle because what's happened is I can see now how I've wasted massive amounts of time by not stopping and taking the time to plan things. And Greg likewise has also recognized that he's not got as much done as he could have because he spent so long planning. So we've had to sort of meet in the middle there and think about, all right, what are the key things that we can do to really make sure that we're not wasting time on pointless activities, that we have got our objective in mind with whatever it is that we're doing. And I think this comes back as well to your social media. If you're in our courses, you've heard me talk about planning your week out ahead. And the reason I get you to do that is because if you post on the fly, you're not thinking about your objective. You're not being strategic. You're not thinking about how do I connect with my ideal customer on their level. You're not thinking about posting times and all of those important things. You're just randomly throwing things out there and hoping something will stick. And that's planning to fail. It's not going to work. You might get somewhere every so often, but it's unlikely to get you the great results that you really want in your business. So I encourage you to plan your weeks out. And that comes to all parts of our business. So here's what I've discovered is some really simple things that I can do. And you guys, I've talked to you before about my favorite planner. I actually I'll show this to you guys as I'm talking. I use this every week. I've got the Daily Greatness. I use the business planner, but there's a personal planner. There's a success planner. There's even an exercise planner that you can use with this. And what I do is I sit down each week and I just plan out roughly what my week is going to look like. And I plan into that the learning, the things I'm going to do to push myself out of my comfort zone. I plan in the frogs, which are the things that I don't want to do, but I've got to get them done. So I can punch those out early in the week and I can do the things that bring me joy towards the end of the week. And then most importantly, I plan to rest. Again, learning journey, not doing so well at this at the moment, but I'm absolutely planning as we come into the end of 2020 and for 2021, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, making sure that I have planned into my calendar time to rest. I also plan around my weaknesses and my strengths and my known areas of self-sabotage. If I know that I'm going to get in my own way on something, I plan around it so that I make sure I'm thinking, if I know that if I put something in my calendar that I'm going to ignore, I find a way to make sure that is not going to happen. So just a few little things that, you can do that might help you with this process. What I will do is I'll pop a little link into my favorite planner into the show notes. So if any of you guys want to grab an awesome planner, this is one of many. This particular one I love because it's got a little thought funnel system. So instead of writing a to-do list that is never ending, it allows you to block things out based on their level of importance. It's worked so well for me over the years and I highly recommend it. So I'll pop a little link to that in there. I think the link will give you 10% off so you can jump in and check those out if you want to get yourself a really cool planner for 2021. But they're my 5 things, my 5 key learnings for this year, guys. Going into 2021, some areas that I'm going to pay particular attention to. So just to wrap up, I'm going to really quickly retouch on what those 5 things were. Number 1 was social media success doesn't come from the things you do, but from the people that you connect with and how you do that. Number 2 is you can't be great for anybody else if you're not being taking care of yourself. So I can't be great for you if I'm not looking after me. Number 3 is when we focus on the problem, we get more problems. Number 4 is the biggest obstacle that's got in my way in 2020 has been me. So what can I do to get out of my own way? And number 5 is if you don't succeed to plan, then you plan to fail. And it's that simple. So guys, I hope that this has been a little bit of an interesting refresher for some of you, maybe a little bit of an internal reflection for some of you as well. I really hope that this has inspired you in some ways, reminded you of some important things as well. I certainly, reflecting on organizing, writing out this podcast, this has been a great chance for me to stop and really think about these things as well. And lastly, I just want to say I can't wait for what 2021 brings, guys. Nope, there's not going to be a magical lightning strike happen at the strike of midnight when we cross over into the new year. But what is going to happen, and I commit to this from my perspective, and I sure hope you do from yours, is I'm going to be the change in 2021. If not for anybody else, for me. So I'm going to leave that with you guys today. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I look forward to another amazing year of podcast episodes for 2021 and continuing on this journey with you. But have a really, really awesome end of this year. I look forward to chatting with you again in the new year, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. Have a really great one, guys. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and bye for now.